Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Game Changer. I'm Mariam Zia. In today's program, we will be talking about interim Prime Minister Anwaar-ul-Haq Kakar's address at United Nations General Assembly's 78th session. Of course, this shows Pakistan's foreign policy contours, and we will be dissecting these contours in today's program. When we talk about this important speech, of course, it signifies Pakistan's stance on different regional as well as global issues. Of course, Prime Minister highlighted the global economic crisis and the challenges that the world is facing. He talked about the issues faced by the countries of the global south as well. We will be talking about that as well in today's program. And of course, Kashmir issue was also raised at this important platform. He also highlighted that Pakistan wants to work with all its neighbors, including India. And he also raised voice about different conflicts in different parts of the world. We will be talking about this important speech in today's program and how it signifies Pakistan's foreign policy and of course the role of United Nations in all this as well. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Brigadier Mohammad Zishan, who is Senior Analyst. Welcome to the program. We are also joined by Mr. Shehryar Khan, who is Senior Analyst. Welcome to the program. And we are joined online by Expert in International Affairs and Senior Analyst Mr. Humayun Khan. Welcome to the program. So, Brigadier Zishan, let me start with you. Of course, this was an important speech. What are your key takeaways from this speech? And of course, there were some questions also raised by different critics that this was a speech made by interim Prime Minister, maybe doesn't hold that much significance. What's your take on this?
Thank you very much for inviting me on a very important subject today for Pakistan. First of all, we should understand what is meant by United Nations General Assembly. The first session of United Nations General Assembly was on 10th of January 1946 in London, and at that time 51 countries participated in that. This forum has all the members of United Nations present, and they are all speakers and they have the voting power in this at this forum. It is one of the major forum of the 6 organs of United Nations. Now, the importance, UN General Assembly session where the heads of states or the representatives of the state, they come.
Of 193 countries.
Now it's 194, I think.
Yeah.
So, there the Prime Minister of Pakistan has given a statement about Pakistan, Pakistan's situation, Pakistan's stance and opinion on world affairs. He has also introduced to the challenges faced by Pakistan, and he has highlighted the concerns which Pakistan has today. So, in that term, irrespective of being elected Prime Minister or interim Prime Minister, he is the Prime Minister, and his speech has been recorded there and will always be a statement by the state of Pakistan at that forum. So, I generally I believe that it was an important event, and the speech was very well crafted. It encompassed all the issues concerning Pakistan, the major issues, and the concerns Pakistan has about the regional and global issues.
Of course, this is very important, and when we talk about Prime Minister's speech, Mr. Shehryar, I want to start with SDGs, of course, and climate change, and also the role of global financial institutions that was highlighted in Prime Minister's speech. So, of course, there were proposals made about special drawing rights of the developing countries as well. What's your take on this? How it signifies Pakistan's role in United Nations, and how important this issue is for developing countries like Pakistan?
So, Mariam, I basically looked at the Prime Minister's speech in great detail, and it can be very easily summarized in 3 C's. So, the first is climate change, second is COVID, and the third is conflict. So these are the three broad contours that the Prime Minister touched upon in his speech. So when it comes to climate change, that was of significant importance because Pakistan is one of the most affected countries when it comes to the devastating effects of climate change. So he basically reminded the world that the global north has committed over $100 billion in terms of climate finance, which the countries of the global south can access and develop programs and strategies to mitigate the harmful effects of climate change and basically do their part in adapting to the effects of climate change led devastation. Other than that, the Prime Minister also reminded the world that Pakistan, being one of the most affected countries, giving the example of the floods that happened like last year and the impact in terms of dollar value, loss of lives and the loss of GDP to Pakistan's economy, that was highlighted. When it comes to the commitments that the global north made in Paris last year, over $10.5 billion, that paves way for Pakistan's reconstruction efforts in terms of adapting to climate change, but that is like not enough. The amount of losses that Pakistan suffered were in tune of around $30 billion. So this is like a small step forward in terms of global climate finances, loss and damage fund that Pakistan was able to establish in the last meeting, as well as of utmost importance. The key discussion that is like taking place in this realm is whether these countries of the global south will receive these fundings in the amount of grants or will these be again loans. And that brings me to the second point of the international financial crisis that has been generated because of the high interest rates.
And I want to talk about that as well, that of course the interim Prime Minister pushed for a more equitable international financial order or system. Do you think this is possible, and what needs to be done? And of course, what are the issues when we talk about what led to this crisis, and what led to these questions raised by the global north, global south on the systems established by the global north?
So this like brings me to my first point, the 3 C's.
Of course.
So this is like the cusp of how all of these factors like COVID, climate change and conflict, and that is like pointing towards the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and the effect, the ripple effect that it has had on the global economy. All of these 3 factors have like come together and they are the leading cause of the global financial crisis. Other than that, the global inflation and the resultant rise of interest rates when it comes to the multilateral financial institutions and the bilateral loans that a lot of developing countries basically take. So those payments have increased because of the rising interest rates, and these interest rates are rising to curb the global inflation. The scarcity in the commodity market as well is also linked to that. And when all of these factors are combining, that is having a devastating effect like made even worse by the impacts of climate change. And now the global south is in a lot of restraint when it comes to debt financing, how to basically adapt to these changes that are like impacting them, given the fact that they have a very small role to play into bringing this global climate crisis in the first place. So there's like a consensus that is like needed, and now pointing towards the COP28 that is supposed to be held in Dubai in the coming months. These will be a very important, this like sets the agenda for leading discussions that will be taking place in this regard.
Of course, that is going to set an agenda. But Mr. Humayun, when we talk about Pakistan's role in all this, and of course Pakistan is advocating for equitable financial institutions, international financial institutions, what kind of reforms Pakistan is pushing for?
Thank you, Mariam. I guess I would say what Sharyar was saying, and I will just expand on that. Pakistan, with the help of China in the last COP27, we spoke about the losses and damages fund. And we, along with G77 plus China, were able to include in the agenda of COP27 this losses and damages, able to have a consensus signed between the major participant of that country. This was particularly one of the most highlights for the global south, which was China, and then Pakistan was taking the lead. And why Pakistan was taking the lead, everybody knows. We have faced with the most devastating floods in our recorded history. We lost around $34 to $35 billion worth of economic losses. Around 33 million people were affected by this, which is 1/3 of the country. And then we were also faced by catastrophic need to how to mitigate the damages, and we needed around 10 to 14 billion dollars to mitigate that dangers. So within that realm, Pakistan was also very much at the forefront of fighting for the global south. Now, Prime Minister, when he was speaking at the United Nations, his focus primarily was on, apart from many other things, was on climate change, and he was talking about climate justice. That countries like Pakistan has been suffering from last many years because the global north has been developing at a very rapid pace, and the environment, which is called global common, has been affected by their economic development and the carbon emissions. We, on the other hand, have not been. We have, the other hand, has been the smallest portion of carbon emission from the Pakistani side. How much was that? Less than 1%.
1%,
So
of
in that
course.
regard, when he was speaking on the behalf of Global South, it was very important. It was a very loud and clear message. So
Right.
he said that we need Global North to focus on these special drawing rights that you have mentioned. He also mentioned that, $100 billion was promised from the Global North to be
Yes.
spent on the Global South in terms of mitigation, in terms of climate resilience strategies that these countries needs to adapt in order to maintain the sustainable development goals for 2030. So all these things combined with Pakistan's case, I guess, put across a very, very effective case in terms of the United Nations that
Right.
global North needs to work more in terms of helping global South in order to achieve sustainable development goal of 2030.
Right, right. So, of course, Brigadier Zishan, when we talk about this important speech, interim Prime Minister also highlighted Pakistan's triple food, fuel and finance challenge as well. From international perspective, how do you think, what kinds of strategies Pakistan needs to employ to address these challenges and seek international support?
Mariam, we have to zoom out a little and understand the nature of this global economic crisis. Just briefly, if I say that it started from COVID.
Right.
During the COVID 2.5 years, the developed economies from the West, they pumped in $3 trillion into their economies. Now, with this $3 trillion coming into the developed economies, it gave rise to more spending by the people, the employment rose, joblessness or the unemployment, it fell, and there was a lot of spending in terms of imports. Now, those imports, they charge the exports of the developing economies. This also created inflation in the developed economies, and the interest rates also rose. Now we are at a stage where the developed economies are, because of the inflation and raised interest rates,
Right.
they are importing less. When they are importing less, the developing economies which are based on exports to the developed world, the Western world, those developing economies, they are feeling that the crunch and the inflation is high and our interest rates are also high here. So
159 countries are facing these debt crises,
so
of course.
it is generally predicted that in next 6 to 9 months, the system in the developed world will stabilize and they will start importing. And subsequently, the developing countries where we are, Pakistan based on exports, our exports will also rise. So this is the situation where we are in right now, and we, as predicted by the experts, that in next 6 to 9 months, the global crisis will settle.
Of course.
Till the time it settles, Pakistan doesn't have much hopes. Now, coming to the discussion by Shahryar and Mr. Humayun, the Pakistan's stance of having fair share in investments and in concessional lendings
Yes.
from the international financial
Institutions.
institutions is appropriate and it is rightly timed.
Of course.
However,
Right.
we may not expect too much coming too soon. It
Of
may
course.
take some time.
Of course, it may take some time, and very eloquently put by you that we need to zoom out a little to address Pakistan's economic challenges. So let's move to Pakistan's economic challenges. Those were also highlighted. Of course, there were a number of reasons, COVID, and then of course we had floods, and of course when we talk about Pakistan's strategies to address these challenges, of course, SIFC is an important forum. How important this was for Pakistan to highlight this on UNGA, and what kind of investments can Pakistan attract maybe from allies and other, kind of foreign direct investments?
Prime Minister has highlighted that there are 4 key sectors. One is the agriculture, then it is energy,
mining,
then it is mining, and then IT.
IT.
However, we must understand that Pakistan's problems are not related to only investment flowing into Pakistan. Pakistan's economic problems are related to the consumption we have, both the government and the public people. They always have a very high consumption rate, and because of consumption, the imports, the requirement of imports, it is there always in the market, and imports create your current account deficit. You have to pay in dollars. Plus, we also have a fiscal deficit which we cannot handle, and because of that, right now we have about 7% of GDP fiscal deficit this year, which comes to around 5 to 6 trillion rupees. Now that money has to be pumped into Pakistani domestic market. Again, it is going to give rise to consumption.
Right.
So as per the policy, coming to the SIFC, as per the policy, we have to get out of this consumption-oriented economy.
So what needs to be done to, get out of this consumption, because we are a consumerist society?
We have to get out of consumption-based economic policy or economic model to investment-based. And for that, the actions which are to be taken, people at the policy-making positions, they do understand well, but it is politically pretty volatile, pretty difficult to take, because for some years we will have a dark patch in Pakistan's domestic economy. Only then we will be able to get out of the challenges we are facing today. If we have cosmetic treatments, I don't think so we'll have any future.
Right, of course. And when we talk about these economic challenges, one of the reasons may be that Pakistan is located in the region that is least economically integrated, and Prime Minister also, of course, highlighted this point as well. How do you see Pakistan's role in, enhancing integration, economic integration specifically within the region and beyond?
So, Mariam, like the Prime Minister talked about the broad contours of Pakistan's domestic policy and the foreign policy as well. And when it comes to regional integration, that's like more pointing towards the connectivity that is Pakistan is trying to establish with Central Asia.
Of course.
And that is a very emerging market. It is very resource rich. It has like a lot of like natural resources. There's like a lot of like trade that can be done with from Central Asia through Afghanistan to Pakistan. So where does the tricky patch come in? The tricky patch comes in when it comes to the stability and the situation in Afghanistan. Now, the fact that Afghanistan's government is not recognized up till now, international financial institutions or even multilateral lending institutions will not be investing in any major infrastructure projects that pass through Afghanistan, or they require investment in Afghanistan. So that is a major roadblock when it comes to connectivity between Pakistan and Central Asian states. And in like various programs we've discussed in detail, a lot of like investment projects, especially connecting the Trans-Afghan railway network, connecting Uzbekistan through Afghanistan to Pakistan to the Gwadar port. This is a major connectivity artery that is needed to connect Central Asia to Pakistan.
Right.
And this can also be seen in the broad light of the international conflict that is like taking place. Obviously, it's like very unfortunate that this conflict between Russia and Ukraine has led to, it's one of the factors why there's like so much inflation and the commodities are, commodity prices are rising. But this is an opportunity, especially for Pakistan, and we've discussed this, that now Central Asian countries will want to diversify from their dependency on Russia and using Russian ports to access Europe and like other Western countries. And now they're looking southwards to Pakistan to get their access to the Arabian Sea. And Gwadar port has a major opportunity for them to export and like diversify their markets as well. So when it comes to the foreign policy, connectivity in Central Asia is very important. The connectivity and regional integration is hinged upon peace and stability in Afghanistan. So these, in both of these areas, Pakistan...
And of course, don't forget the neighbor, of course, India was also, we are going to talk about that as well, that Pakistan is looking for peace in the region and looking for economic integration, and Pakistan is willing to work with all its neighbors, including India. But Kashmir remains an important issue or conflict within the region, and that is maybe the key to peace in the region. We will be talking more about it, but after a short break. Welcome back. We are talking about interim Prime Minister's speech at United Nations General Assembly, and of course when we talk about this, an important point highlighted was Pakistan's shift towards geo-economics. Mr. Humayun, when we talk about Pakistan's shift towards geo-economics as highlighted by interim Prime Minister at UNGA as well, how significant is this for Pakistan to highlight this at UNGA, and how does it aligns with Pakistan's regional as well as global interests, and what kind of opportunities and challenges does it present to Pakistan?
Thank you, Mariam. I guess this was made pretty clear by Prime Minister Kakar that, there has been a long desire for Pakistan to shift from geostrategic outlook in its foreign and security policy to geo-economics policy, and we have been working on that for the last many years. And you already mentioned earlier that, the regions don't progress unless there's a connectivity within the region, and we in the South Asia are one of the least connected region, and the main onus of responsibility for this lack of connectivity lies on our eastern neighbor, India, because we have been asking Indians, the Chinese have been asking Indians to join China-Pakistan Economic Corridor or Belt and Road Initiative. They've been refusing it. We have been asking them to help us in other connectivity, which is, Shahriyar already mentioned, South Asia and Central Asia connectivity. We have heard many issues from the Indian side. For example, we proposed, or not only us, but many other countries proposed India-Pakistan, Iran-Pakistan, India gas pipeline, which was like a very huge mega project, which could have given a lot of revenues to Pakistan, would have helped the Iranian people. And Indian also could have benefited, but India backed out of it. So considering these issues, there is the peaceful resolution of Kashmir dispute is also something very important, which is also the backbone for this regional connectivity. So once India decides to take part in a meaningful dialogue with Pakistan, discuss how this connectivity will help the entire region, the trade could blossom and prospers if Indians manages to lower their ego and help Pakistan and other regional countries in order to have connectivity. That's something very important. And then Prime Minister also talks about the resolution of Kashmir on the UN resolution, which has also been a long-standing issue for us for many years, many decades now.
Right. One of the oldest issues that is on UN's agenda, of course.
Yes. So when he talked about that, he also mentioned about the cross-border terrorism coming from the Afghanistan side, which is also creating a lot of instability. And different dossiers have been presented to the United Nations from the Pakistani side, involvement of eastern neighbor within that realm as well. So this makes it a very confusing and mixed issue for us. We are trying to shift from a geopolitical and geostrategic outlook of our national security policy towards geo-economic policy. We are part of China-Pakistan economic corridor. We're getting into the second phase of that. We are also talking about South Asia, Central Asia connectivity. We're also talking about sustainable development goal and helping global South. We need countries like India to help and support us, but we are not getting any support from them. And this was highlighted amply by Prime Minister Kakar in his UN General Assembly speech.
Right, of course, a very important points highlighted by you, Mr. Humayun. But when we talk about, of course, an important aspect that remains a key aspect of any Prime Minister at UNGA is, of course, the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. And because this remains one of the oldest issues at UN's agenda, what prospects do you see of resolving this issue, keeping in mind the situation after 2019?
Unfortunately, from the Indian side, we have seen a continuity of their policy, particularly this current government of Prime Minister Modi, which talks about Hindutva ideology and focusing more on moving away from the secular India, which a lot of us used to know and believe that India was a secular democratic country. Having said that, 2 terms of Prime Minister Modi, and it turned out to be like a country which does not want to talk about its neighbor, which violates the minorities' right everywhere. And the recent incident, which Prime Minister also highlighted in one of the conferences on the sideline, the killing of the Sikh leader in Canada, which has been highlighted by Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, and many other factors. Like when he was talking about Kashmir, it has become the world's largest open jail. Violently suppressed peaceful protesters we see every day. Pellet guns. There are like multiple issues. Like there are so many issues which the United Nations rapporteurs on human rights have even submitted in the UN, which has not been accepted by India or completely denied. Then the United Nations Military Observer Group of India and Pakistan has not been given access by Delhi government for last many years. There is
Right.
no access by UN Commission for Human Rights and over a dozen special rapporteurs of human rights by the Indian side. So all these measures by this current government of Prime Minister Modi is not helping in terms of following or going towards a resolution of this dispute. And then if this dispute is not resolved, the economic integration of the region has a big hindrance. The
Right.
idea that Pakistan wants to move towards the geo-economics and wants to have a bigger pie within the region and intra-regional trade increase cannot be achieved if India continues this policy, which it's doing for last 2 decades now.
Right, right. Of course, let me take the same point to Brigadier Zishan. Of course, Prime Minister highlighted that Kashmir remains a key issue in the region, and this is key to peace within the region. And he also called for implementation of United Security Council resolutions on Kashmir as well. What do you think Pakistan needs to do more to maybe garner support for a resolution of Kashmir dispute?
Before I discuss the point you have raised, I just want to add few comments on the subject of connectivity, which was discussed just now. We must understand the concept of connectivity for specifically Pakistan. Connectivity, if we look at the east, it is India, and with India we certainly have trade options, but where we will be the minor partner or the junior partner in the trade. However, it is going to justify our certain economic cost of imports. So that is one point. The other aspect is towards the west and the north, which is via Afghanistan into Central Asia and connectivity with Iran. That is basically focused on importing cheaper energy from those countries. They are not our markets because they are very small populations over there in Central Asia. So we are not looking at Central Asia as our export market. Rather, that is going to provide us cheaper energy via Afghanistan. Connectivity for Pakistan has to be seen in the concept of exports, and our connectivity is through the maritime Silk Route, which is the essence or the central idea of the CPEC, that in phase 2 we are going to develop the special economic zones, and as Prime Minister has highlighted, manufacturing. That manufacturing is going to take place in those SEZs, and those SEZs are going to, that manufactured product has to go through Karachi port and Gwadar port via Arabian Sea, Red Sea towards the market of the West, Europe and United States. So the concept of connectivity for us is different, and as has been highlighted, that India factor is such that we don't see it is resolving Kashmir dispute, which is the core dispute between India and Pakistan, anytime soon. So
So what is then a significance and the role of these United Security Council resolutions on Kashmir issue, because it remains one of the oldest issues on the agenda. So what's the point if the conflict remains as such?
Basically,
for decades now.
United Nation itself doesn't have an authority.
Of course, it doesn't.
It is the consensus of the countries which are the members
but what
of
about
United Nations.
International mediation?
International mediation, we have seen
because
a very important
we are witnessing
development.
A humanitarian crisis in Kashmir as well.
We have seen few very important developments very recently. One, there was a contact group on Kashmir of OIC where the Saudi foreign minister has given a statement where he has highlighted very deliberately that Kashmir must not remain unresolved, and we cannot have peace if the issue of Kashmir remains unresolved. So this is one thing which has come up and very significant. Secondly, in United States and the West, especially after the discussion which is taking after the Canadian charges against Indian government and Indian state institutions that they were behind the killing of the 6th activist who was a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. So after that, the discussion is getting over to the far right policy of Indian government, and not only Indian government, the Indian state institutions, and that has created a lot of problems for the minorities in India. Now, considering the minorities of India, just the Muslim minority in India is more than population of half of Europe. So you should understand the crisis which is there in India, and now it has been highlighted through the follies of India by the West. So we don't foresee an immediate action by the West, but certainly people are raising voices now that the issue of Kashmir, the issue of Muslims and Christians and Sikh minorities in India.
And right-wing, of course, extremism is also highlighted by interim Prime Minister as well. Of course, Hindutva was also, in his remarks, interim Prime Minister also raised questions about this extremism and Hindutva as well. So how do you think that West is seeing all this? And what response United Nations can do in such, because terrorism remains an important issue, and when we talk about causes of terrorism, of course poverty remains one of the cause, and of course not giving rights to minority remains one of the causes. What needs to be done?
Before I answer this question, we must realize that India has a geopolitical and geo-economic importance. Within the competition conflict between United States and China, or I may say the West and China, India has a very important role to play. So this is one aspect. Secondly, India has become an economic powerhouse. So these two things combined, they give certain significance and weight to the India. However,
but
recently,
United States has also, raised questions on India after Five Eyes reports, of course.
Yes, the point is that Indians have overplayed their, importance, overplayed their hand, And now the United States and European countries, and as you highlighted, the 5I countries, which is United States, UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, they are not happy with this far right manifestation, what they are doing, not only in India, but on Western soils also. So this will have an impact on Modi's policies, and we may see India, trying to diplomatically manage this situation, and we may also see certain, rash and extreme measures which were taken a few years back against the Muslim minorities. There will be certain flexibilities shown by Indian state on such issues.
Of course, this is very important, and in the same context, Islamophobia is an important issue that was raised in this important speech. What's your take on Prime Minister's remarks, and what the world needs to do to fight and combat, of course, Islamophobia? Of course, in last year we know that 15th March was, marked as a day to observe a day against Islamophobia. But what needs to be done more in that regard?
So Pakistan was one of the major countries that basically brought the resolution passed against Islamophobia in OIC to the Human Rights Council of the United Nations, where it was overwhelmingly accepted, and then the International Day of Islamophobia was also constituted. So Pakistan is like at the forefront of combating Islamophobia. In the speech of Prime Minister Kakar, one encouraging thing was that he also appreciated Denmark's move on passing resolution on banning outlaw the burning of the Quran, and the Swedish government is also considering it. So it was a constructive approach in which he basically highlighted the positive steps and that need to be encouraged, and there needs to be a global consensus on how to basically curb Islamophobia. And in that, they also presented a way forward. In the way forward, Prime Minister said that there should be a special envoy constituted by the UN that focuses on curbing Islamophobia. He also asked to develop a council that basically should be constituted, which has like members from across the globe, and they also basically take up cases from across the arena to combat Islamophobia. So a proper practical implementation plan was presented, and Pakistan again took the lead in curbing and countering Islamophobia. This is also very linked to the rise of the Hindutva politics that we were just like discussing, and India's move from a secular democracy to what we now call a electoral autocracy, in which one religious group is seeking domination on the rest of the minorities of India. So that's also a wake-up call for the global stakeholders.
Of course, and talking about the wake-up call, of course, Interim Prime Minister also highlighted other conflicts within the globe, and talking of which Ukraine issue was highlighted by him, Syria, Yemen and Palestine issue. How do you see Pakistan's role in advocating for these conflicts within the world, and what should be the response of the world to these conflicts, so when you talk about mediation, of course?
So when it comes to global politics, nobody has suffered more than Pakistan when it comes to being victims of like global conflicts, regional conflicts. When it comes to terrorism, Pakistan has lost like over 70,000 lives combating.
And like, of course, Interim Prime Minister also called for the implementation of global counter-terrorism strategy as well.
Yes, so he basically focused on what the pillars or like what are the driving forces of terrorism and like international conflict. He talked about global inequality. He talked about like the global justice system. He also like talked about the devastation, poverty, climate-induced poverty. All of these basically give rise to various forms of conflict and various forms of terrorism. And to basically, as Brigadier Sir was also mentioning, the whole world is like now giving more preference to economic considerations or economic compulsions, and human rights and global justice is taking a back seat. So the international community also needs to realize that there is a certain limit to which certain countries should be supported as a pivot to other rising economies, and the whole agenda of human rights should not become a victim to economic compulsions. So that was like main crux of the Pakistan stance on conflict, This pointed towards the rights of Palestinians. This talked about the rights of Kashmiris. This also gave Pakistan's stance on Ukraine as well. And whatever happened in the Middle East, you know, that's like also in front of us. So Pakistan basically gave a very positive way forward, pointed out what the drivers of conflict are, and they also like presented a solution.
Of course, and when we talk about presenting a solution, of course, Prime Minister Kakar also emphasized on the importance and significance of multilateralism to address all these global challenges. Mr. Humayun, what's your take on this? How significant is multilateralism in that regard, and what's the way forward when we talk about UNGA?
You know, multilateralism is something which we have been advocating for a very long time with our allies in international community, particularly when we're talking about China and Pakistan. There are a couple of different initiatives, which one of them we have discussed at length, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and Belt and Road Initiative, which is like a multilateral initiative. Other than that, Pakistan, when it was one of the chairs of the Global Development Initiative goals, which was supposed to help sustainable development goal, that was one aspect multilateralism which we have seen in the coming age. Global Development Initiative, which China promised that $10 billion will be allocated to help achieve the Global South in terms of achieving sustainable development goal. With that, we are also part of Global Security Initiative, which is also another multilateral arrangement in which different countries are coming together to solve the security situation. And we have seen, and Prime Minister Kakar has mentioned in his speech as well, that Iran and Saudi Arabia rapprochement in the Middle East, which was a cause of concern for many decades, have been achieved through the Chinese initiative, the Global Security Initiative, which was a massive multilateral achievement. More than 80 plus countries are part of it. International community is also part of it. International financial institutions, international organizations are part of it. So I think we also believe we are always for multilateralism. We want to solve issues of conflict when it comes to Afghanistan, Kashmir, Palestine. We like OIC, we like SCO, we like all international multilateral forum. So I guess Pakistan's stance, even today, and in the speech when Prime Minister was mentioning in the UN, was that, you know, we need to empower more United Nations. And there was also a very specific comment when he mentioned about the United Nations Security Council reform, which is very important issue. And Prime Minister gave Pakistan's peace of mind to the rest of the audience that we do not believe in the elitism of the Committee of Nations, which is the question that you are asking. We believe in multilateralism. We do want that the additional permanent members should be increased, in which India is one of the aspirants. But we believe that if that is done, this is going to further erode the credibility and legitimacy of this forum.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Humayun Khan, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Brigadier Mohammad Zishan, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Sharyar Khan, for joining us in today's program. Of course, in today's program, we discussed about interim Prime Minister Anwaar-ul-Haq Kakar's speech at 78th session of United Nations General Assembly. And of course, this signifies the importance Pakistan gives its role to its role at United Nations General Assembly. And of course, it also shows Pakistan's vision for the region and for the world, and the constructive role that Pakistan is willing to play to address these complex global challenges. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.